Join us every week on Spotify, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. Welcome to Beyond Survival.
The people who know, they know, and I think even the people who are perpetrating this kind of behavior know who we're talking about. Like they recognize it. They recognize it in themselves. Right? And so that makes it even like more weird because you can just stop doing all of that negative shit.
Like when you say a TV survivor, it's a recognition that we all had that we went through, a hurt nobody knows about,
Exactly, but it doesn't mean that we finished the journey. It's kind of just the beginning of everything. Like when you gain freedom at a certain point, basically, we're talking about teenage boarding schools, wilderness camps, conversion therapy centers, whatever. Once you leave those environments, you can get stuck there and never really break away from all of the oppression that you faced, So going beyond that in your life and still being a vocal voice for, in whatever capacity, changing, fixing, ending, the troubled teen industry programs. There's a huge variety of ways that people think about correcting these situations. Some people want to burn them all down. Some people want, legislative action. I think a combination of all of that kind of stuff is really important. But
it's it's a lot of things that people don't realize how weird America is. Is almost its own nation. When other people look at what America is, it's not insane to think that this could happen because there's so many different laws of each state, and then each state doesn't necessarily look at the mistakes that are happening in other states based on this cause. You know what I mean? Right.
There's definitely not. Well, it's similar to abortion in a lot of ways. Like
right.
Not that there was even a Roe versus Wade version of protecting children from, false imprisonment. But aside from that, it basically comes down to that whole states' rights thing, and we do things differently here. Like, I remember a few years ago, Montana was really trying to, or there was a group of people in Montana trying to legislate changes in their programs, and it just kind of fell apart, and no one really people lost interest, kind of, or and certainly nobody in a neighboring state is really that interested. Idaho isn't going to be that interested in what Montana's doing as far as their teens.
Right.
Right. It's just
a lot of transferring between states, and it's but they do let most of the kids didn't go to a school in their own state.
Right. Then that's very similar with a lot of those, even, adult situations with rehabs and stuff. They want the idea, I guess, is what the philosophy is supposed to be. It's not. It doesn't. It's not this at all, but it's like, oh, we need to get you out of your comfort zone or
Right.
into a different location so that things are fresh and new for you, and you're going to meet a bunch of interesting new people from all over the place. You know, like, okay, and from all different like backgrounds and quote unquote troubles, and you know, I often remember this, and I don't know what school it was, but it's in Georgia, and part of their website, their big pitch was that boredom, like if your kid seems bored, you better get him to this place. Like that's like the bar is so low that they're like, well, he seems not to be doing a whole lot. Like you better get him out of there. Like, what in the world? Yeah, that's not my definition of a troubled teen. That's just like a regular guy, you know? But they're like telling you, like, you know, if your kid isn't enthusiastic enough about, you know, the family outings, you better like get him to
get them the help they need. It's
get
like,
them the help they need, right? And then but then they meet some guy who's like a 17-year-old heroin addict who was in the wrong place too. He should be doing some, like, they're sending people to the wrong programs, or they're sending people like to places that aren't qualified to help them anyway. And then they meet up, and then like, Lord knows when the kid gets home who's bored, he's on heroin or something. It's so like, come on, really? Like that happens. And you know, and it's that's not okay. You know, that's but like, as we were saying, that's in who knows where that is. That's somewhere else. That's in like Florida or something, and California doesn't care about that. Like there's no real national drive aside from what is it, I don't know the name of the legislation that isn't going to go through anywhere.
Oh, Sika?
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunate. Like the reporting legislation where programs have to they have to tell you about it. Hold on. They have to tell you about if they can find somebody in a room. That's it. Like that's basically it. They need to tell somebody about it. Before they didn't have to tell anybody about it, and they still don't. You understand? Like that's the status quo. Like these places are still super private. They don't have to disclose hardly anything. But that's kind of the extent of the Sika stuff. It's okay. Now you guys are going to have to tell us when you lock a kid in a room. That's it.
The whole thing. The whole thing is that it's only for schools that are publicly funded. 90 million. Most of it is not like, these are private schools. These are not like they only, like the Sika bill in the end is only for the foster care system. It has nothing to do with privatized schools.
That's good to know too, because see, I wasn't aware of that. So it's even more narrow than.
Yeah,
I mean,
and we didn't know that either until we were in DC.
Oh, okay. All right. So you know, and don't worry, we can edit all that coughing business out too. No, it's cool. It's cool.
I don't know if I'm taking down Parrish Hilton Part 1, Part 2, man. Like, I'm like still really mad about that shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily know if she did stuff on purpose to hurt people, but it seems to me that she did. So
hey, I think that Parrish Hilton is like, it's kind of like, I think we were talking about this before we started recording, but you know, where the Jordan, our podcast that Alexi and I have done together, Lily Spearbreaker, a few other people. We're pretty much the largest voices like in this space, other than someone like Paris Hilton. And now, I'm certainly not going to call out like, the way that other Survivor episodes like do their thing. Like there's certainly no judgment there. But with someone like Paris Hilton, who's a big public figure, and that's her whole life,
Right.
and she chose that position in many ways. She has to continue to cultivate her position in the world, through promotions and selling shit and all that. She has to continue to be a celebrity. So in cases like that, you can fire away as far as I'm concerned. Like, celebrities are a different sort of animal than what you might find on a regular YouTube or Spotify podcast.
Yeah.
That's a different situation. So yeah, you should like wonder about like what her motives are really. Like, is this just to sell books? Is this just to, what's really going on there? Like, her money giveaways or, all of that is pretty, I don't know, suspicious, I guess. But I don't know, like, who knows, right?
Yeah,
So
I could tell you what I think happened from just the fucking 100 people who told me stuff and what I've gleaned. Because I don't think it's necessarily her fault.
Well, I don't necessarily. No, okay. Well, and then right, and I don't necessarily want this to be like a Paris Hilton bashing session. Like, I'm not into that either.
Exactly.
Right?
No, I don't think
like she is a real advocate, but like
you
just wonder like how dedicated this person
because
is.
I was
right.
really mad at her.
Right.
I was really mad that we weren't recognized. But what I think happened is that she did try to help us, and when she found out what people did in her name or in the name of what we should do with her money that helped us, she has removed herself from the situation because she doesn't not like want to help, but I don't think she knows what to do, and I don't think she has any idea of how angry some of us are with her.
Well, this right, and this also kind of leads into a different scenario that is certainly possible and probably true. If Paris Hilton wanted to jump back in to a bigger role in advocacy and like legislative stuff or whatever, just jump back in basically. And she saw what was going on too, like within the community. Do you think that would be something that she'd want to get involved with?
Right.
Right. Like the whole, come on. Really?
Yeah, no.
Like, no, really. Like, that might be more true than anything else that is even possible. Like, because this kind of I don't know, just mean-spiritedness has been going on for a long time. And it's no secret. And Paris Hilton is close enough to people who are either have been, I guess, to use a word, victimized, or the people who are perpetrating the bad behavior. Like, she's close to both of those people,
Right.
So what in the world would someone like that want to jump in the middle of that? Are you kidding me? No,
Right.
no, it's not going to happen. She's not going to get her like. No, one like I don't think it's a good thing for anyone to like for her to try to pick sides and something like that because it's just like she's heard that shit all her life. Like
Right.
people bashing her, like for whatever reason, back in the back in the Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan days,
Right. Because I mean, yeah. Because the whole thing is that when I started this documentary, Parrish Hilton was the biggest famous. She was the most famous person to talk about this.
Sure.
And I knew her there. When I returned as an alumni from CEDU, I was told to tell her to stop acting a fool and to let CEDU happen because there was worse places she could get sent to. And so for a week, all I did was say, hey, don't act a fool. There's way worse places than CEDU. Like, it's not that bad here. And so I feel bad about it. I actually do feel bad about that time because I don't know if she remembers me as a good person or bad person because I know she would remember me.
Yeah, but all that stuff is shaded with the environment. It's too. I mean, you're still under that pressured environment
the whole thing
too.
is that her people know who I am. They know I've been working on this documentary, and she still has not talked to me. Like, you know what I mean? And we were called.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. She can't. Like, that's the reason. Part of the reason is because of all the bullshit that's been going on in the damn community. Like, that's so important to realize that you're not going to get big, giant platformed people with some of the stuff that's been going on between people. They're not. They're just going to opt out. They're not. They're just not going to do it. But we're really talking about accountability, not as like a punishment, but as a way to like empower ourselves. You need to. People need to take accountability for their actions and what they're saying. Because, look, if you're talking about like you're starting a cult, like, and it's satirical and funny. To a lot of people, that's not funny. And especially if you have a large audience, like you're not gonna. That's. I think it's pretty gross, because it like reminds people of kind of what they had to go through,
Okay,
and so now you want to it's not.
Nobody's gonna know what we're talking about.
Well, it's not, people chalk it up to like, oh, it's gallows humor, it's dark humor. Well, okay. So, you have people coming on to tell their stories, on TTI interview channels, and they want to remain anonymous. A lot of the times that has a lot to do with, not wanting heat from other survivors or from the programs themselves. And for someone that sensitive to like need to like remain anonymous, do you think that joking about starting a cult is a good idea? Like, do you think that helps anybody? People do know who we're talking about. People know exactly who we're talking about. And I think it's kind of disgusting to even joke about that kind of stuff. It's gross.
Yeah,
it's not cool in any way. It doesn't make you.
They can say that it was my fault because I said the name first.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. But see, if the shoe fits, right now but then co-opt that idea, like as an, basically, it's basically like this, when. Way back when Hillary Clinton was running against Donald Trump, right? And Trump co-opted the word deplorable, right? It's the same kind of fucking thing. So you
I
and
think that we
so
got.
no,
I
she
think that we
insulted him and said
start.
she insulted him, right? And he co-opted it and used it as a weapon, right? So you insulted them, and they co-opted it and used it as a weapon and spread it far and wide. Now it's a shirt.
I know.
Yeah, right.
It looks
Like
like a
so
whole
you
T-shirt. It
so
looks like the. It looks like a. It looks like a girl band from the '90s T-shirt.
and then you have to smear Barbie too. Really, like why would why is she involved? Right? Think about that. Like
It
that's
was
just
well, the post about the my first cult, the Fisher Price my first cult, like or you remember or like it's like
yeah,
a
okay, but see,
that
they go farther. They go farther than that. They use it as a fucking weapon. So,
I know, yeah.
right, so it's different if you're like, hey, I mean, it's different. And if people can't see that that the intent is so mean spirited and meant to belittle people and make them feel unwanted in the community,
Right.
that kind of thing. Like, so what? Like, that's the question. Like, what are you trying to do? Like, what are you trying to accomplish here? Like, are you just trying to
Yeah.
make people like mad? Like big mad. So, or sad, or like, I don't know. I really don't understand like what that's all about. Like, because it seems like like punching down. Like, wow, really? you know, it's it's like, okay, oh, you're the big strong person, and you're just gonna step on somebody, and it seems like a big waste of time and very divisive. Um, I mean, is it people? And then people talk about like being trauma informed, you know, and then
None
in
of
this
us
in
know
the
what
same
we're fucking doing.
in the
Okay,
same
we need to
breath,
start. Okay, we need
yeah.
to start over. And be like, okay, like not like. I just let me just I just want to say like who like give a quick like who I am to the community. Like if I am in if I'm in Chat GPT as a leader in the community, that's funny to me. But I just want to say
It is
so.
pretty funny.
Okay, so like I went to CEDU in the early '90s. I went to a Hollywood version of all the troubled teen industries. The only ones better than mine were Cascade. I still have not looked inside the Hyde School, which is still active in Maine, but I would like to because I think that the Hyde might be like a brown acid version of CEDU. Um, our campus matched the brochures. We didn't get beat. We didn't get physically hurt. It was unneeded, right? But my life is still ruined by it to the point where I feel I need to make a documentary about it. But more so because when I met people that went through the WASP schools, um, I knew that they had a different level of hell that maybe we could we didn't know that it could have been that bad. Because what I figured out is that CEDU and other schools like mine are controversial because we have success stories. Because there are people that say it wasn't that bad. And the thing is, those stories are never compared. People don't like to discuss. Sorry, hold on, let me clear my throat. Hold on. People do not like to discuss what happened to us, to the other people that went through different experiences. And
Right. You never hear those stories. That's interesting. Like, that's really interesting.
The thing is that I don't know why that is, and I know that our stories
They're not exciting. They're not exciting, and they go against against the grain of the whole survivor community. Like in a sense.
The whole thing is that
sure.
What you guys don't realize is that you guys have to recognize that when you tell your story to somebody that didn't go through this stuff, That in itself is traumatic to know for them. They're never going to fucking forget that. So people think that what we need to do is tell the saddest story on the planet to get people to recognize it. And that's not going to work. And it's also counterproductive to just keep talking about the worst of the worst parts of this stuff, because for a couple of reasons. But also, there are success stories among us. And it's not that they're success stories. They are among us, and they went through hell. And they are trying to be a part of the movement. But they are shut out and talked about like they are still indoctrinated a lot. And that's not really necessarily what's really happening.
Right. And that's what I was talking about with the joking. And because and in a lot of cases, it does not appear to be joking. It does not appear to be something that, because someone who just was looking in from the outside wouldn't necessarily know the difference.
Right.
You know, really, like because when you think about it, you're like, okay, you came from here, you're telling this super sad story and like whatever disaster your life was because you got sent here. And now you're joking about a cult, or you're part of the cult now. Like now you're part of the survivor cult. And so people, like I said, from looking from an outside perspective, who either are survivors or just are general public or don't know the situation in particular, it looks pretty bad. Like, and I think that a lot of programs can use that information and these like disputes and all this like infighting to their benefit, because they can point to that. They can point to it. Yeah.
I have a life outside of this stuff. Like I play music, I stick guitars, when, it's after the point in my life where when I go out in public, people talk to me about this stuff and they recognize that there's a lot of drama within the community, and they've looked into it and they'll be like, you're doing something cool. Like, because they recognize that I'm actually I'm standing up to like a mean girl kind of situation.
Right.
And like
a mean guy too. It's not just mean.
That,
sure.
Me and Marcus are adults in this community. I'm going to be 45.
Right.
I met somebody who was 20 the other day, and she went to 5 schools. She knew the difference between a CTI school and a not CTI school.
Yeah.
It was the cult aspect of it.
Uh-huh.
And she said that 3 were CTI cult schools and 2 were just, bad facilities. But, there is a difference. And, even when I say that, to somebody else in the community, they were like, oh, but, I still count those other ones as CTI schools. And it's like, well, if the person that went through it didn't, we have to be realistic about the credibility of our movement. When I started a list of all the schools that I want to explore. And it got a little scary for me when I had to start mentioning hospitals. And then, but when I talked to those people, I agreed that they should be on the list. But, there is a large spectrum of what happens in the mental health world. You know what I mean?
Sure. Some very legitimate clinics, hospitals have referred. I've spoken to these people myself. Like we had, at 16, 17, decide to refer them to some program. Yeah.
But for example, my best friend from being there, his name is Jackson Nash, and his wife, Melissa Nash, she told me after she watched the program on Netflix, she was like, I went to one of these places, but hers was good. That it was an after school program
Right.
that like every other weekend they
Right.
went like camping,
Sure.
and like during their like after school sessions, like in this building, they were allowed to smoke cigarettes and shit. Like,
Right.
and it was like, and when we found out why it was good, it was because it was run by a man who went to a really bad school in either like I think it was in Arizona or New Mexico. He went to one that was really bad when he was young, and so he started a good one. But that's a very,
So
very,
that's kind of
very,
a,
very
but that's
story.
but that's more of a like a day program. I mean, but it serves the same purpose, right? Basically, I mean, you
Right.
want
So
to
it's
get
like,
these kids doing something or whatever. I don't mean, there's so many different situations too. So it's really complicated. The whole idea of like the TTI, because there's a lot of different situations. There's, I know,
I'll give you.
I know, for example, like when I was living in Southern California, there was a teen-oriented drug and alcohol rehabilitation that one of my friends worked at, and she, it's run exactly in the same fashion that an adult rehab was run. I mean, uh, no scandals, nothing. Everything was chill. Everything is fine. People are getting clean from drugs and alcohol. Great. Like there's no controversy.
Right.
So there are places like that. There are drop-in centers that may have more controversy than a fucking program,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? Like people who come and go, like who are
Right.
free.
But the whole
Like
thing is that
there's a lot of different situations. So it is
what
good
I'll
to
tell you.
single
Let
out.
me tell you about.
It is good to
Right.
single
Like
out
when
the ones that are bad and the ones that are better and the ones that are good. Sure.
Right. Like when a year ago, I was institutionalized against my will for 10 days for making this documentary because my dad did not believe me, and he figured a way to get a hospital to take me in against my will. And when I was in there, a new guy came in that was 19, and he was insanely hard to deal with. And but then through talking to him just a little, I told him about my documentary, and he told me that he went to 2 Outward Bound programs. And that I said, did they make you feel shit? And he said, yeah. And I went, holy shit. Like he's 19 and he went through 2 Outward Bound programs that were over a year.
Yeah.
And then when the incoming nurse came in, I was like, this guy went to 2 Outward Bound programs. He's going to be in my documentary that none of you guys believe is real. And she goes, oh, I went to Outward Bound. It saved my life. It got me sober. And I go, how long were you there for? And she goes, 28 days. And I said, I know what the problem is now. You're the fucking problem. Because there are the places that are success stories every once in a while. They are the living commercial for the rest of the industry to keep going.
My ex-girlfriend of mine went to Teen Challenge as a teenager. She had been doing porn as a teenager, and she was sent to Teen Challenge to get herself straightened out, and it saved her life. There you go. But that's kind of the end of the story. She didn't get beaten. She didn't get isolated. She didn't get mistreated. She was like given a program of rules to follow so she could get her life straightened out.
Then that's the whole thing is that
now she's a nurse.
People don't like my documentary or are against me sometimes because I want to know the full gambit of what happened to every survivor.
Now, nobody should be mistreated like that, is what I'm saying, right? Really, like individually, nobody should be fucking mistreated like that. No, like it's not a good thing to have happen to you, to be hit by a staff member or to be thrown in isolation or wrapped up in a rug. You love that one, right? Wrapped up in a rug for hours.
No, we didn't get that.
All of that.
Like,
no. What I'm saying is those things should be pointed out and ended. That should not happen. Now,
Oh yeah.
but
But the whole
the
thing is that
story
what
of
I'm
the
saying is
guy who
that- what
didn't
I'm
get any of
saying
that
is
stuff done, okay, he didn't have any of that nonsense done to him. That guy should also have a voice, right? And he needs to be able
Right.
to tell
But
his story. And maybe he saw the guy get wrapped up in a rug and didn't like it, but it didn't happen to him. So what then?
that's the whole thing.
What
Yeah,
then? What then?
People, yeah, like that's the whole thing is that
You know?
the whole thing is that people don't like my story because I think that the staff should also like be able to say how the fuck they ended up working there. And when I did that, I heard shit you guys want to fucking know, and it's very unpopular because it's a once you understand like
Okay.
what staff have to say about fucking working there.
Okay. Here's something
Sorry,
else.
yeah.
No. This is also important about staff. And the reason that I want to point this out, because just as in life, all of our lives, they're compartmentalized, right? You're doing this here.
Yeah.
You're doing that there. You're doing this thing over here. You have a different persona basically when you're at home as opposed to like going to the office, whatever. So, any particular staff, in quotes, like generic staff, doesn't know what the fuck is going on. For one thing, because they're not going to do the bad thing in front of them. They may not even know
Right.
about it. They may not even know a damn thing about it because this fucking student isn't going to tell them about it, because then it's going to happen even worse. It's right. You got to think about this shit. Like, so if you want to denigrate everybody who's worked at a place, you're wrong, because they don't necessarily know.
Because when I started this,
They don't know.
so
Some do
because
know.
when I
Some
started
know.
this, when I started this, I've had a relationship with a couple of the staff that I was at CU with, because one of them is the reason why I'm a guitar builder, because he taught us physics. One was the fucking hippie that I just loved, and another one I went through all the emotional growth stuff with. When I got to interview two of them. One I still haven't yet, but I interviewed them first because I knew, like, because they agreed to talk to me about how they got to work there, right? How am I going to say this? They know fucked up stuff happened, right? Like, not two of them did. Like, 1.5 of them did, right?
Sure.
One of, like, the main staff at CU that I love the most, right? That tells me the most stuff. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. When I got back from filming, he specifically told me, "Did you hear about this thing yet? That you've heard about this thing?" And he confirmed something. I said, "Yes." And it was, I mean, I don't know if I should say it because I don't want to trigger anybody, but I got a confirmation of something specific on campus none of the students knew was there. And he's like, "I bet you've heard about this being there." It was pretty insane because it is a confirmation that there was actual, like, something really bad happening on the CU campus that none of us knew about. And it's only been, like, I didn't even want to touch it because it's so controversial to talk about pedophilia or whatever.
Well, yeah. So here's right. So here's the thing with, like, the bad things happen. Bad things happening on whatever campus, whatever program. Hold on. Let me finish my thought here. So when, like, people do terrible things on their own. They do terrible things, and it doesn't have to be connected to any particular ideology or program or whatever. Like, people just do terrible shit,
Right.
And they do that. But here's the thing: like, if it happens under the guise of the program of a particular place, where now something horrible has happened, and now there's other people, like, potentially in danger, right? Oh, from another, like, terrible thing happening. So the school, the program, whatever, needs to take accountability for that. They need to like take all proactive measures, like not hiding and not doing something weird, and then take care of whatever the problem is, and then take responsibility and accountability and make sure that that isn't happening. That has to be the case, or that place doesn't deserve to be a place anymore. So then they can't be a place. And so, but that's the thing. But you can't. Well, you have to take these like case by case things, and the problem is they seem to be happening in a lot of places. You know, it's really tricky talking to even to parents. Like that's another subject, you know, that we really want to get into is, you know, they've been indoctrinated too, or there's so many complications with that stuff too. Because every case is different, and some people didn't know, or they didn't care.
The craziest.
Yeah.
Thing about it is the guy that hurt the only man that I know of that really hurt people at CEDU. He's an alumni of CEDU. He graduated from another CEDU school.
Well, I think that makes sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it also makes sense of some of the behavior we're seeing, like within the community. Frankly, it makes sense. I mean, there have been documented cases where people who've been through these programs have leveled up to whatever junior staff. They're like a PE coach or whatever. They're doing they're doing physical education that doesn't really exist. But they're
that was the whole thing.
That kind of thing.
There are staff that I feel should be recognized. That there are staff that didn't hurt us, and I've asked them to be a part of that, and that is not. People I think that it's like a way for them to whitewash what happened, and that is not what it is.
I think most staff aren't hurting anybody. Most, if not, 90%. What's the ratio there? Most of the people are not hurting other people. Okay, there are some that may be hurting people in a particular way. With
the staff that help my documentary the most are the people that, when they watched the program, cried their eyes out because they were like, "How does anybody think?" Not for two reasons. First of all, they knew that CEDU was fucked up, and they left and they thought about it for every day for the rest of their fucking lives, right? Second of all, it's like, how are they doing this to kids? And I thought that they were going to be worried that we thought that was the same. Do you know what I mean? There's a big thing with the CEDU kids watching the program is that we didn't get beat like that. That just didn't happen. Right. We weren't physically restrained. We had to do fucked up stuff. We had to sit alone or do what we didn't have to go in wilderness stuff, and we kind of stayed in line. Well,
as compared to Elon too, where they had these.
Elon was worse.
They had these, these breakdowns where you get to stand in front of the entire congregation and get torn to pieces, that kind of thing.
I think that Elon
that's systemic, right? See, those kinds of behaviors, those are systemic parts of the program, right? Now we're talking about individual people doing bad things. Well, that isn't necessarily part of anybody's program. Okay, it could be. It It could be
Well,
like
like
a policy thing, or whatever. There are a bunch of like abusive policies too that really need to be addressed, and they just don't get addressed, because here's also what happens when the one bad person does something. They focus in, and we kind of tend to do this, focus in on the thing that the person was doing wrong, right? Like they held somebody down or sat on them, okay, but all the other things, like with like the no eye contact or no talking or having to ask permission for every move you make, right? Can I walk? Can I open the door? Can I?
See, we didn't have those two things. We had the first two things, but not the
Right.
the last two things.
Right. But so what I'm saying is like, so those things exist, but if somebody is like wrapping someone up in a rug, that's what's focused on. No, I know, but that's what's focused on, and to the exception of everything else. Like, and so they're like, okay, well, we won't have that anymore, but everything else still exists. That's an issue. It's a problem, and that should be taken into account. When usually it's not. It's just focused on the one bad person. But the programs themselves are very flawed, is what I'm saying.
When something that happened in Synanon was that they wanted the teachings of Synanon to be like shared. Like they wanted the members of Synanon to just be prophets of that teaching or whatever. Right. And when they applied it to schools, right, a big thing that Mel Wasserman didn't give a shit about was fucking any sort of like proprietary shit on what we learned. Like it was well known that staff would leave to start new schools, and it wouldn't be exactly CEDU. It would be a different version that they wanted to do.
Right, because they had a different idea slightly, or they wanted to jazz it up or whatever.
Or maybe it was because they can't steal all of the stuff because they'd have to pay Mel Wasserman for it or whatever. But
right, to like disguise it a little bit, right? Like it's not really CEDU, but it kind of is. Yeah.
The 66 or 67. I have it on paper that says 66, but it says online 67, right? Synanon was still active at that time. Okay, the schools that spawned that were direct actual CEDU schools that I know of were Rocky Mountain Academy, Boulder Creek Academy, Mount Bachelor Academy, Ascent was the Wilderness School, and I think there's one more. Northwest Academy. That's the other one. Northwest Academy, right?
That's all with I think those are all like NatSap schools, I think.
Right. Yeah. So the whole thing was that CEDU was the nicest, first, kindest, gentlest one, and it was kind of like we didn't know necessarily what the other schools were. Like we thought they were pretty much probably just like CEDU. You know what I mean? Like. I even didn't think there was much of a difference between RMA, which was like RMA
is it kind of the creepiest one though too, in a sense? Like is CEDU kind of the creepiest maybe too? Like maybe not the most like violent or whatever, but kind of creepy because of Mel. He just makes everything creepy.
Well, we were like on the top of a mountain. Right. We were forced to like touch each other all the time.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We were we were basically a school based on John Lennon. Like
right. It's very psychosexual too. In some weird way.
Like our last, what you guys would call like seminar, like for us it was called the Profi. Our last Profi before we had our workshops was just called the Imagine.
No,
And
we called it just muster.
All we did was listen to Imagine by John Lennon for
Oh,
basically 24 hours, and like it was
oh
just
my God.
so I can't. So the whole thing
Oh
is
no.
that I
Really? Like you got to say that
cannot
again. Hold
hear.
on. Wait, repeat that. You did what?
So we did a project called the Imagine,
Oh,
where we pretty much had to listen to Imagine by John Lennon over and over, like at different periods of length for 24 hours. I would say I've heard
wow.
that song like hundreds and hundreds of times.
That's
But yeah,
wild.
in 24 hours, I don't know how many times we heard it. So if I have to hear just the first two chords, I go nuts. My
So,
musician friends, if I find that out about me, right, when I was working at Guitar Center, my friend fucking found that out. He'd go up to a piano and just start it, and I'd kick him in the fucking balls.
oh wow. Okay, so now I get that. See, okay, I'm not going to mention names, okay, at all. No, it's important because it would be kind of embarrassing. But I was making music for somebody years ago, and they're like, I can't do it. I can't. Sorry, I can't even dare listen to music
Oh,
hardly at all. No, and just like or like the radio, like it's really like dangerous for me to listen to the
so
radio
that's
or
the
something
thing. So a lot
because a
of
song might come on and then it's gonna like freak me out. Wow.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Oh, so I guess you don't know that from what you come from. Yeah, so like
No,
a lot of
that was never a
a lot of
thing.
it's cool, and it's different songs. Like I know "Desperado" is a bad song for like the Cross Creek people, or like "Girls Just Want to Have Fun."
These are all like Sea-Doo, kind of like Sea-Doo offshoots, basically.
I have a playlist of all the
Well,
songs they
because
play, every single one.
because there was okay, this is interesting. The the program is very similar, like from from all of this. I'm sorry.
No.
No, the place down the road for me, the Academy at Bridge.
Yeah.
All of their documentation is the same. Like it's all the same. Like you can't, not looking out the window and like uh, and all the seminars,
Right.
like whatever Wellspring or whatever the name of the group is, that came in and
Well, that's
did
all.
seminars. Yeah, it's all the same nonsense. Like, but it's like
And the biggest
mind melting,
thing.
right? It's
The biggest thing, so right.
oh
So the biggest
God,
thing is, so this is this is the bomb track. So right, I knew that I had something when I told Jordan that I had to be Dorothy and sing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," and that I was lifted up into the sky. 'Cause that was called my character stretch.
okay,
And I was lifted up and danced around while the song's theme was playing. That's not like "Fame, I Want to Live Forever." That song.
oh boy,
So when I told him that, he said that he had to do something similar. That he had to be Ricky Martin and sing "Livin' La Vida Loca."
gotcha.
So I was like, that is not a coincidence. You know what I mean?
Right.
When I met when Rocky was the only person that would touch my documentary when I was filming it in April. I started filming my documentary 30 years exactly to when I was enrolled at CEDU.
Yeah.
And Rocky's the only non-CEDU survivor that would be interviewed. And I didn't even know what we were going to talk about because our schools were so different. But when we were walking in, he thought all I had was my freaking iPhone. He didn't realize what we were doing. But I said, I told him about that. I told him that I had realized that me and Jordan went through something similar because of the character stretch. And he said, and Rocky goes, "Oh, I had something like that." You know what I mean?
Right.
And that was when I realized that, and through talking to other people, the character stretch, I think, is a very common theme in all cults. That it's something that nobody's really, maybe some people know about it. I think that in a lot of things, it's called the key. I think that it has something to do with the key, and I think it's called the character stretch, but it has something to do with dressing up in something. It definitely has something to do with you have to put on a costume.
Yeah.
Act a fool. You have to act a fool in front of everybody and like make a fool of yourself so much so that you are praised for by everybody.
Right. So it's like,
And it's
right. It's like ego
it's
death.
in Freemason shit. They do it in Freemason stuff. It's in in the movie Midsummer.
Sure.
She does the Mayfair dance.
Yep.
It's in Midsummer. I think, and I don't know. I don't know what happens in Scientology, but I'm sure something like that happens.
No, they do it a little differently. Like so. When you're reading, Scientology is like fairly intellectual, all up in your head. Like, first of all, you fill out a personality test, and then you take it to like a counselor in quotes. Okay, just some guy behind the desk, a registrar, basically. Okay, and this person grades your test, and then tells you all the cool things all about you, like love bombs you, right? And then tells you all the fucking horrible shit all about you, like, oh boy. And basically the pitch is, okay, now that you know all this, if you walk out that door, you're going to die. Right. And they like, we can help you.
That's the pitch with these places too.
Take our $40 intro to communications course. Okay, so then you go, oh, okay, well, I went slightly differently, but I was tricked into becoming employed by the church through a private school that's actually a Scientology front. I was a teacher's aide, but the method that they used for reading, like as a teacher's aide, I had to like learn this method. And so when you're reading a book, when you're reading any kind of text and you feel distracted, bored, tired, whatever,
they make you reread and reread.
No, you also have a dictionary on your desk and a pad of paper and pen. So you need to go back to the beginning and find the word that you misunderstood, that you didn't, you skipped or whatever, right? You skipped it or you didn't catch the whole meaning. So you need to go all the way back, find the word, look it up in the dictionary, write that definition out.
And then what about the Scientology dictionary, though? Because then there was
the thing is what you're reading. Okay, well, now in the private school, they were just reading textbooks, right? But in the same fashion. But in Scientology, when you jump back over to the Scientology area, it's a form of brainwashing because you're reading Scientology texts over and over and over again. Okay, so it's just ponderous and tedious and a bad way to learn on the public, on the private school side. It's like ridiculous. That's not good. That you can never get through a book, like it's just like what? So, but in Scientology, and when you have to do studies and stuff too, and all kinds of weird exercises but that's what they do. So they don't.
There was something I recently understood about why I think that
it's to get you out of your head. It's to get you out of your head to put different stuff in your head. Basically.
Right, and so that's the whole thing. Is that something there's this whole theory that I had that in 1967 something happened because that's when CD was founded. I think that wasn't one of the sects of Scientology founded in 1967 too.
I think that was like the
Clearwater, Florida one or something.
Maybe, or it was like one of the English centers
Because the
that
thing is that
like yeah one of the two because he
anywhere, like,
wanted he L. Ron Hubbard fashioned himself a captain of a boat, so he like he traveled around like across the
yeah,
Atlantic to England and
that- something, I don't know. It could be two things. It could be as nefarious as like L. Ron Hubbard and Mel Wasserman and Mel Semler and Roloffs and whoever, all these people,
right
and
were they
fucking
like were they all around
and Charles D.
together at the same time, you
Charles
know?
D. Diedrich and
Right,
like Charles D. Diedrich and all these people that like all these people were like in a fucking room together doing something to make the entire civil team
right,
industry.
with along with these
What
weird right along with these weird like
probably is more fucking likely is that in that era of time,
yeah
there was a whole bunch of hippy dippy bullshit happening
yeah
with the Hare Krishnas and like all those weird books and like there was lots of cult shit and it
Aleister
was
Crowley
kind of cool.
and all of that stuff and
And it was mostly like that's like, but I do there was
right
there might be something about like I mean we're
yeah,
definitely also tied to weird other shit I'm not mentioning right now, but it's like
it's very similar to the modern day like tech bros and their
right.
weird hippy dippy shit, very wealthy, very weird, same kind of thing. Like, but they're not interested in starting like teen programs anymore. Like those guys, are doing some different thing with social media.
Right, like there was some time that was told that like if your kid smokes weed, a school will make that so that it goes away. Or but then at that same school, if your kid does heroin or if your kid has tried to kill himself, that's
Right.
the same school for that kid that just smoked weed once.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Right. Or was bored, like that, like I was saying earlier. So I
I
think,
mean, like there were some. Oh, I who has to get on here is this one girl. There's a girl. Her name is Christina, right? There's a girl that like when she got to CEDU, she was sent there by like the public schools, like the LA County public schools, right?
sure.
And so she figured out that she had to graduate and that they weren't going to pay for her to get sent to any other place, right? And so that she was there for 2.5 years and they couldn't send her away. So she never agreed to do anything. She broke every rule. And it got to the point where they didn't let her go to our raps or our profits because she would learn like why somebody was sent there. And then she'd be like, you fucked your sister? Oh, you're fucking disgusting. This motherfucker is like she would learn stuff about kids and make fun of them. So it got to the point where she wasn't allowed to be like, no, it was like there was a rule like don't tell this girl your disclosures or like it was like
That's like
she wasn't
man, that's like a hero. That's hero shit right there. So
like she's a legend. When I tell people about her, they're like, oh my
great.
God, I can't wait to meet her. I'm like, she's one of my favorite people.
All right. I think with that, I think that is our debut episode of Beyond Survival because we had to get all the crap out, really before we could actually start. Hold on. Before we could actually start getting into more different conversations. But go ahead.
I think that we should. I mean, it's basically like we are in this community. Anybody that doesn't know who we are, right? Like, just to sum it up for anybody that doesn't know what's going on, like, there's a community of people that are survivors of the industry that is right now on TV sometimes. And I've always been, like, trying to be an open book and try to help, like, try to talk to people to be in something that I'm making. And it's wild. It's very unliked amongst a lot of people in the community. And, I don't know how much deeper you get. I don't know. We're trying to make something for a bigger audience, but we've said a lot of things. I don't think anybody knows what we're talking about.
Well, no, that's part of why we're talking about it because it's still like even though like we said earlier, there's been Dateline episodes 20 years ago, documentaries. Sometimes, we're on Netflix. Sometimes we're on HBO Max. Sometimes, we're on the big YouTube channels with, Escaping Scientology, like big, with A.A. Ron and all of these people.
A big part of what I want to do is to revisit the people that were in the past ones. I'm in touch with 2 people that were in the last stop. I'm in touch with a lot of people that were in the program.
Sure.
I went to DC, walked into a bathroom with 4 girls that were in the program and couldn't even pee because they could all hear me. They all knew my name. They all knew my school. I was gushing at Alexa Branch. She was wearing a Def Leppard t-shirt. It was and then Catherine Kubler said hello to me and said, "Oh, you're making the CD one." I was like, "Shut the fuck up, bitch!" It was crazy. You know what I mean? But
it's very
it was.
It's very validating. It's good.
It was, the program was the one that got it the best. They did the best job. They were the biggest one that made it, because they showed friends together doing something together. It wasn't a spotlight on one school at one person at one time and not showing it in a broader aspect. And the best thing that the program did, the best thing Catherine could have ever done, she did in one shot. It was that one shot that showed the map of all the schools, and that CEDU was one of the top ones, and that all of them spawned from us. And that saved my fucking sanity.
Yep.
It saved a lot of us. You can complain that it was only about that one school. She showed that map of the TTI, and we all have to take her for that. But I really want to be. I've just been trying to be the second wave of what we can do, but in a meta way, in a self-knowledge way. That all these documentaries are out. What else can we do? Because people are still doing this. We have to show this to a way that is artistic, breaking code silence, just spitting things that the worst things that happen to us. We can't do that anymore. It doesn't work.
Well, you kind of have to go, do your own thing, really, and create your own platform and create your own community. And that's, that's what we're doing, and that's what we've been striving to do. We're also, I'm going to keep on doing these multi-hour exposés about programs that are still open. I do deep dives into all of their stuff, all of their website, and use their own words against them in a lot of ways, just by telling the truth about who they really are and whether they're even qualified to be doing what they're doing. Because sometimes you just pull up their website of a particular place and go through staff members, and they're not even qualified to be teaching or whatever the case is, or counsel, being counselors. And you find out it's just some dude who they just hired off the street. It's there's still a lot of that going on because maybe it sucks, because I think that if the troubled teen industry, so to speak, was more open, honest, and forthcoming about their practices, that a lot of more qualified people would be willing to get involved, right?
Well, no, that's the whole thing. It's that that I don't think that that's necessarily a thing. I think that's the biggest thing that no one's really okay.
It is. It's a thing. It's a thing. It's definitely a thing. They want to make as much money as possible.
A girl I graduated recently asked me for a recommendation to a good school. She asked, do you know of a good school yet? After I almost lost my shit, and because I love her so much, I just like, you need family therapy. If your daughter's not going to school and she has anxiety issues, she's trying to tell you something.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
sending her away to a school is not the option.
Adult.
That will just tell you.
The whole thing is that.
Right. That'll tell your family.
Lie.
Sure. Yeah.
There's this entire lie of an industry of the world that strangers can help a problem, because it's like nobody wants to think that if you're an adult, to make an adult change is almost fucking impossible. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, when you say a school can help change my child, for a parent to do family therapy, if they say they'd rather send them away than do family therapy, that should be a red flag on the parents' mental health.
Of course.
And that's something that nobody even wants to look at.
Well, then what do you do about it though? I don't think we want to get into like a bunch of different like solution ideas right now, but like that's definitely something like that's worth talking about. Like, it really is, because there are
it's family therapy. You need family therapy.
Sure. Send them to Hamstone Academy. Send the parents away and give no,
where you go in a group with the mother and father.
Right. Well, look, it still has to be about the teenager has to consent. Okay.
Right. That's the whole thing.
That's the whole thing. There's this idea. There's also this idea. There's also this idea that's been floated where if someone does go into a facility as a teenager, as soon as they step through the doors of that facility, they have full rights. Like they're basically emancipated as an adult. So you can't fuck with them anymore like you can a child. You can't lay hands on them. You can't, do any. It's basically like prison rules, which is different. You can't. So I mean, that's a weird.
You can't call home if you can't call home and say what's happened to you. That's like awful. Like no matter what.
Right. See those kinds of things that alone, like those ideas alone, are so damaging that they like that alone. Just that one policy is like so bad that it casts a shadow on the whole industry. Just that one thing.
But it's that if you can't freely call your kid, what the fuck are they doing? There's no therapeutic reason for a child that's growing up. You know what I mean? Like going through any kind of hardship and you can't fucking talk to your kid.
Right.
The Sea-Doo parents had a handbook of the lingo of Sea-Doo, so that when the kids were allowed to call for 10 minutes every other week, when they said all sorts of weird mumbo jumbo, the parents would understand what the fuck they were saying and not just think that they went insane.
Right. Oh yeah. Like we went through that with Scientology too. Like people stopped being able to understand what we were talking about.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Pretty wild. So, okay, I think we're going to end it there. No, that's great, because we really needed to like get kind of introduced and like, have a basically kind of unstructured, get to know you kind of a thing, because what I want to introduce though is we are going to have a Patreon, and the tiers are for $2 a month. Supporter tier, you get early access, 24 hours in advance before It's released to Spotify, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. There's a chat. You're going to be shouted out if you contribute your $2. For $5 a month, which is the advocate tier, you get extended episodes. We'll probably keep talking like for another hour about different thing, maybe music, and other things like that. It's basically, the idea is to throw a few bucks our way so we can keep doing this. Maybe cut out some of the buzziness of the audio. Who knows? We're going to try to fix that kind of thing. And what else? Yeah, I guess that's it. We're going to try to do this every week. And we're going to concentrate on maybe novel solutions to kind of what to do with troubled teens. Who knows? But we want to make sure that we keep an eye out on anything that's current events, new legislation, other topics too, because we want to kind of expand beyond TTI. You can only go so far with that, really, to a certain point.
I don't think. It's like
you can dive deep for sure.
People will send me like, oh, I was watching an episode of Kojak, and they go to the Synanon building, or like, you know what I mean?
Right,
like,
right. Well, yeah, in popular culture, that'd be interesting too, to like catch, incidents
no,
of.
This is a huge. I mean, it's like I like that. So I like your podcast, because when you would have survivors on, you would just talk about what they were interested in. And that's like really fun. That's another thing, is that like,
oh, right.
Like one of the people that I want to help is this girl, Elizabeth Anderman, who was in the 3rd episode of Teen Torture Inc. And, she's having a really hard time. She's living on nothing. And like, she has a son that sings like a freaking angel, is going to music school. One of the things that I'm doing for my stuff is we're going to make, like a whole couple of soundtracks, and I want her son to sing on the soundtrack. You know what I mean? Like,
well, sure, and we want to get some few other people on too.
Or like, like when I talk to survivors and they found out I'm a musician, I'm like, and they're like, oh, I play too. I'm like, I'm sure, of course you do. Like, everybody's either an artist or musician, and
right.
It's because we're the kind of people that got sent away.
That's
and
true.
When I see that art and hear that music, I want to put that in everything I do. Like, I found, like, the people that I found that play music that are like actual musicians have broken my heart with how good they are and how lonely they still feel because they're not a part of our community.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Oh, it's interesting. Like I've encountered musicians who I discovered didn't know they were a part of the community.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, or like they didn't even realize that they had been to a program, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy too. Like, you're like, wait, you went to a boarding school? And they're like, yeah.
But then the whole thing is that, like, I've separated myself from a lot of people because I am just embarrassed at the level of horseshit they get involved with. It's because when I realized that there's other people in the world that have been through this, and I don't have to associate with people that like systematically try to ruin people's lives over and over again.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. Like, it just, it's odd, but so anyway, yep. I guess that's it.
Anyway, but yeah, thank you so much. We're going to have lots of like fun people on that maybe you don't know about or do know about, and we're going to do this every week. And yeah.